Welcome back to another fantastic video. Today we're going to be talking about different ways that the Constitution can be interpreted and then different powers that Congress has. So let's get started. First, we have two different ways that people can interpret or try to understand the Constitution. The first way is by a strict constructionist perspective. And a strict constructionist is somebody who looks at the Constitution and reads it, interprets it, applies it just how it would have been applied in 1787 when it was originally created. Okay. The second type is a loose constructionist, and that's pretty much the opposite. A loose constructionist is going to interpret the Constitution, read between the lines a little bit, and be able to apply it to modern situations. So, those are our two big schools of thought on constitutional interpretation. And I want you to think back to when we talked about McCulloch v. Maryland a few months ago, this landmark case that dealt with whether or not Congress had the power to make a bank. Okay, if you remember, whenever the Supreme Court looked at this case, they said, yes, Congress, you do have the power to create a federal bank, even though it's not specifically listed in the Constitution. Okay, so I want you to pause for a second and think, is the McCulloch v. Maryland landmark case an example of a strict constructionist perspective or a loose constructionist? And then restart and jump back to your notes. So now we want to look at a few different types of powers that Congress has. The first type of power is called an expressed or enumerated power. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, but express powers are those that are directly stated in the Constitution. Like we could go to the Constitution, open it up, and we could see specifically these are the powers that Congress has, okay? So those aren't really powers that can be argued very much because they're right there in black and white. Think of an express power that Congress has. See if you can jog your memory. Did you get one? Go ahead and write it down in your notes. And if you didn't get one, here's an example for you. An express power is the power to declare war. Congress has the authority to do that, okay? Moving on to implied powers. And implied powers are those that aren't necessarily listed in the Constitution, but they're needed by Congress. We can kind of figure out that they have the authority to do it. So, for example, Congress has the power to coin money and borrow money and spend money and lend money. So we can kind of figure out that they might have the power to make a bank, which was the whole point of the McCulloch v. Maryland case. So, implied powers, not listed, but Congress still has them. So how do we figure out that Congress has implied powers? Well, we look at the necessary and proper clause of Article 1. So if we looked in the Constitution, we would look at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18. And that last section there, that last clause dealing with the powers of Congress, tells us that Congress has the power to make any law they think is necessary and proper. And we've called that the elastic clause before because that stretches Congress's power. It gives them more power because nowhere in the Constitution does it say what necessary and proper is and what necessary and proper isn't. So the necessary and proper clause, also called the elastic clause, is the source of Congress's implied powers. And Congress uses this to expand their powers. And I'm going to stop there with this video. If you guys have any questions, let me know.